So my topic for today is neurological competency development model for learning, unlearning and relearning for corporate employees. This is how the agenda is going to be. Some background literature review, and we'll talk about the learning unlearning part of it, and then the model conclusion and the scope for further research. So a little bit about the background. This study actually started as a literature review focusing on the teaching learning models and theories which can be used for the competency development of the corporate employees. And incidentally, I created a conceptual model which is a fusion of all the studied models and theories. And this new model actually focuses on the neurological aspects of competency development, and hence I have given the name as neurological competency development model. So to begin with the literature review, first theory is Knoll's theory of andragogy, presented in 1984. So let's understand the term andragogy. There are three terms: pedagogy, andragogy, and hoitagogy. So in Greek, pedagogy actually means paidy means child and ago means guide. So it is a methodology to teach children basically, and andragogy means the methodology to teach adults. Pedagogy actually is a instructive learning, whereas andragogy is self-directed learning, which is applied by the adults. And then there is third category, which is oitagogy. Now this is self-managed learning: what to learn, when to learn, how much to learn, basically what researchers typically do. Obviously the instructor control is more on the pedagogy side, and learning maturity and autonomy goes high on the pedagogy side. So my focus is on andragogy because this is what is applied in the industry. So there are certain principles which Knowles has given. So adults need to be involved in the planning and evolution of their instruction. Experience, including mistakes, provide the basis for learning activity. Adults are most interested in learning subjects that have immediate relevance in their job and personal life. Adults' learning is problem centered rather than content oriented. Now, the second principle is what I have used as a part of this model. And then there are multiple theories over here, and I'm going to talk about one by one. First is NLP communication model, which is given by Richard Bandler and John Grinder in 1975, and till date it is heavily used. So this theory of communication talks about external events which we receive by the five senses, and then they get filtered based on our experiences, memories of experiences, decision, beliefs and values. There are something called as meta program, which are tendency of our brain, and strategies, attitude. And how do we filter it? We try to change the input information by distorting them, we generalize them or delete them. It's because of the simple fact that the incoming information is at heavy rate, whereas brain can receive only 7 plus minus 2 chunks at a time. So that is when we apply subconsciously all these filters. So this filter part I have picked up from here, and then it generates an internal representation of the information, and it leads to our mental state, and then there is a physiological reaction, and this leads to the behavior. That's what this theory talks about, and it also talks about the self-talk and thought is also treated in the same way. Next theory here is expectancy value theory. So you must have heard about these two kind of statement. I think I can do well in management, so I want to study MBA. Or there could be another statement by some student: I don't see value in learning history, so I avoid history classes. So here, the expectancy value theory says people put effort in their learning if they think they can or they expect to perform well in that subject. So that is one part of it. Second part is, when they perform well, do they get the reward which is valuable? Now this reward can be two types: intrinsic reward and extrinsic reward. So intrinsic could be their satisfaction, entertainment and all those stuff. Extrinsic could be say promotion and salary increase and all those stuff. Next theory is the social cognitive learning theory given by Bandura in 1977. It talks about three aspects. A personal behavior is affected by the cognitive factors like personality, expectation, beliefs, their missions, their personality characteristics. So all this actually affect their behavior. And there are other factors like environmental factors. For example, when they behave in certain way, whether it is generating reward or punishment, that also matters. If something which is getting rewarded, obviously a person would like to continue that, and if it is getting punished, he will probably not try to do that. And all these three factors, they affect each other. That's what is one part of the theory. Second part also talks about how people learn is by modeling. That means learn by imitation. For example, children. So there may not be any cognitive factor which is involved or environmental factor involved. They might simply see a live person acting and they want to imitate that. So live is one. Behavioral description, bedtime stories that we tell, or even in industry, there are storytelling sessions are getting a lot of importance. So from the given description of a behavior also they adopt behavior, or symbolic like fictitious characters from book or movies, from cartoons. So people pick up those characters. So they model from that as well. So that's what this theory talks about. Next is ABC model of attitude. It talks about three components of attitude, which is affective component, that is also called as emotional component, behavioral attitude, and cognitive attitude. For example, if there is a training arranged on artificial intelligence involves mathematics. Now, in this case, affective attitude will be what they feel about the stimuli. So, person may say that I'm afraid of mathematics, and what they think about the stimuli, that is the cognitive part of it. I think mathematics is very tough subject. Now what will be behavioral attitude? I avoid learning a technology which involves mathematics. So that's how the attitudes are formed. That's what ABC model of attitude says. Next is learn, unlearn, and relearn theory, which is given by Azmi, and she has also given this FAST culture in order to support learn, unlearn, and relearn. FAST means FAST. F stands for flexibility. So the organizations which have the freedom of space, time, and work in their operations are called as flexible organizations. Then the agility is how do you respond to the changes? How quickly do you respond? So responsiveness, and how do you evolve? So continuous evolving is involved here. Then it is called as agile organization. Steadfastness is a resoluteness or commitment for your mission and vision, the persistence aspect of it. Then the T stands for the tactfulness. It is all about the thinking out of box. So these four aspects are important for learning, unlearning, and relearning. So what is unlearning? So Azmi also has given the organizational forgetting chart or table over here. So he says that unplanned forgetting is negligence. Every organization has built over their own knowledge base and experience base. Now, when you destroy those because of negligence, it has a negative consequence because it is unplanned, right? And next is sabotage. It's one example is your cyber threats, which destroy the data by some person, maybe some internal employee who is not satisfied or some external hacker. So that is how it is intentional, planned, and has negative consequences. Then there is decay, that means if you are not using certain skills and competencies, automatically it gets obsolete and gets destroyed. So that is a positive consequence. And then comes the unlearning part, which is a planned forgetting of the stuff. So it's not that you have a skill and you will forget that, right? So unlearning is active and deliberate attempt towards strategic planning. So unlearning always comes with a relearning part of it. As we mentions that it can be done in two ways. One is time pacing. So it's a strategy where changes are scheduled at a predictable interval. For example, Gordon Moore, who is a co-founder of Intel Corporation, predicted the processor, that is CPU speed, would double every 18 months. It is also called as Moore's law. So based on that, they have planned their capacity accordingly, that every 18 months it is going to change. So we will have to relearn about everything, the hardware, the design aspect of it, and everything. So that is time pacing. Second way in which relearning is done is event pacing. So it is a strategy of scheduling the changes with the events. For example, if the competitor changes the strategy or shift in technology or change of law, so that is when you need to relearn the process. Now, all this theory, when I studied, it started jumbling up, and then I thought of sorting them in order. And there comes the neurological competency development model. What is the limitation of existing theories and model? They do not provide the complete picture and focus only a part of it, and they are too generic and not specific for individual competency development. That was the focus of my study. Now, first, let us understand what is the meaning of competency, anyways. I mean, this is again another theory which I studied, given by Hoffman. And he also mentions that there is nothing defined, consolidated as a single definition of competency. But still, he divided that into four parts, like individual competency, a corporate level competency, and output-based competency and input-based competency. Now, what is output-based competency? When a job responsibilities are well defined in output terms. For example, in a factory, the worker should be able to create say 15 products per day. So that's a performance related. Or along with that can be mentioned that with the given specification. So that also is a part of competency. So it is output based competency when the things are quite simple. But now you can assume that there is a job vacancy for say head of the research department. Now you cannot define this in terms of output. Only defined output may not be there. So that is when the inputs are defined, like what kind of knowledge base, skill set and abilities that person should have, and on the basis of that interviews are conducted. So we'll focus on this knowledge, skill and ability, because that is how you can actually define that it's a function of your knowledge, ability and skills. Now, how it is defined in corporate terms. So, competency framework is first defined in corporates. For example, there are functional competencies which are defined: accounting, performing, data analysis, engineering. So, these are functional competencies. Core competencies could be decision making, teamwork, adaptability, problem solving, etc. Now, based on that, they define the role specific competency, that this particular role requires these many functional and these many core competencies. Now, competency has a level as well. So, 5 levels which are defined as per the theory: novice, competent, proficient, expert, and master. For example, the new person who joins this particular role is expected to show novice level competency, and later on, with the maturity, progresses throughout other competency level. And further, the competencies are clustered. That means they are classified, and US Department of Labor has classified in 9 competency clusters. Now, where are all these inputs coming from? They are coming from the business needs. And what do we do with this? So, learning and development department, who is managing the learning, will first do the competency gap. So, what is required versus how much competency do we actually have or a person has, and depending on the trainings are designed. Now let's talk about the neurological competency development model. So here, when the training is going on, what happens at neurological level, as we have seen in NLP model of communication, the things get filtered out and then the perception is formed. So as per one of the principles of NLP, it says that the perceptions are not the realities. Metaphorically, it is said that map is not the territory. So that means whatever map that we create, it is of the actual world, but they are not the real world, right? So whatever I see from the given situation is my perception, and that's what is my reality. So that leads to state of mind and various attitudes. So all those attitude theory will come here, and I have described in the paper as well. These are all things which are practiced for during say training session, and that would lead to competency, which is in terms of skill, knowledge and ability, and that helps in the performance. And as the Knowles theory says, that people learn from their experience and their mistakes as well. So there is a learning happening as a part of own feedback, people feedback, and whatever experience that they are gaining. And other than that, there are environmental and social factors which are helping in learning. Plus, an important part here is the retrospection and self-talk. People do retrospect about whatever they are thinking even before doing the performance. People do the self-talk all the time, and this can help in changing your attitude to a great extent. So that's a very good tool actually. So these are all the inputs which can be given, which forms the perception and change the state of mind, attitude, and leads to the competency. So that's what this model is about. And now coming to the conclusion part, the neurological competency development model takes the holistic view about the competency development. It explains the relationship between various environmental, social, and neurological aspects which contribute to the competency development. The model can be leveraged for various competency development purposes, including learning, unlearning, and relearning. The model gives the relationship between various components, and how do you change the input will help in changing the outcome as well. Flexibility, agility, steadfastness, and tactfulness are the essential attributes of the competency required for the learning, unlearning, and relearning part. As we know that these are the abilities, and abilities are definitely part of competencies. Next is regular retrospection and positive self-talk are great supporting tool for learning, unlearning, and relearning. And now beyond competency is the scope for study. Now, what had happened during pandemic is unforeseen environmental and social changes had made trigger, and actually it has triggered state of minds like denial, anger, bargain, and depression. So these are the general state in which a person goes before accepting the reality. So denial, because whatever they believe to be true suddenly became untrue. So that means their assumption failed and they were in state of denial. Then the anger. So if somebody has developed a lot of competencies based on the offline working, and now there are so many new things, newer ways. So my experience, older experience are no more valid. So that leads to a lot of frustration and anger. Then there is a bargain. Can I go back to my older ways? Can I still go back to my older ways? That's the bargain people try to do. And then there is a depression. So that is also because of partly the identity. Once they are in, say, lockdown, their identity at work, the social identity, so these things are no more there. Their mission suddenly fails because their assumptions have failed. So that leads to depression. And this needs coaching, mentoring, and counseling, and not just training aspect of it. And that is when this is the scope for further study and development of this model can take place in this area. So that's all what I want to say. So thank you.